Hey, Raising Athletes podcast fans, Kirsten here, and I have to share my new favorite hydration secret with you. Corvive's Hydrate in pink lemonade. If you're looking for the ultimate hydration boost, this is it. Corvive's Hydrate is an NSF certified for sport, trusted by 4 Major League Baseball teams and 3 military bases. With 6 grams of pure organic cane sugar, it ensures you absorb all the electrolytes you need. And get this, it has 3 times the electrolytes and 4 times less sugar than those leading brands. Plus, it's developed using the World Health Organization's standards for oral rehydration solutions, making it the equivalent of a bag of IV fluids. Best of all, there are no artificial dyes or sweeteners. It's so perfect for the entire family. You can drink it any time of day, before, during, or after workouts or sports. So say goodbye to sugary juices and hello to superior hydration with Corvive's Hydrate in pink lemonade. Visit corvive.com. That's CORVIVE.com. And use promo code Kirsten. That's KIRSTEN for 30% off your order. Try it today and feel the difference. Hello and welcome to the Raising Athletes podcast. My name is Kirsten Jones. I'm a peak performance and sports parenting coach. I am also the author of the Raising Empowered Athletes book, which came out just over a year ago and is selling very well. I'm excited to be getting out into the communities, talking to parents, working with athletes, talking at schools, and really spreading this word around peak performance and how do we help our middle school, high school, even college athletes. About 4 years ago, my oldest son was getting recruited to play basketball, and one of the schools that recruited him was West Point. And so we had the opportunity and the privilege to be on West Point's campus and take a tour and get to see the amazing facilities. And my guest today, ironically, he probably doesn't remember it, but we actually met that day. And my son CJ got to sit in his office and in his white pod and experience how he worked with athletes at West Point. So Dr. Nate Zinsser, I'm so excited to have you on and talk about your book, The Confident Mind, which is really the nuts and bolts, I think, for every powerful athlete, artist, you name it, fill in leader. The tools are all in here.
Well, thank you so much, Kirsten, for the invite. It's wonderful to be on your podcast after all these years. And yes, I do remember your visit and your son's delight at what we have to offer at West Point.
Yeah, it was impressive. I mean, we toured many campuses, but to see the focus and I feel like now it's becoming a lot more mainstream, but let's take us through your journey academically and where you got to where you are now. I know you're no longer with West Point, but have you seen a huge evolution around people thinking, the mindset matters, the worrying about what's going on? Like when I played college volleyball, there was no such thing as to work with a team psychologist. If you're lucky, you sat down with your head coach, but it was kind of always just, you'll figure it out, just keep working. Now we have, I know of some D1 teams that have 3, 4, 5 sports psychologists on their staff. I just had the Buffalo Bills sports psychologist on. She says we have a team of 10 people that are working with the pro athletes. So I think we've really come a long way.
Yes, we indeed have come a long way in the last 20 years. When I started at West Point in 1992, we were really careful not even to use the word psychology because at the time it was so tainted with the idea of pathology and mental illness and really the simple and very important things of confidence despite setbacks, focus despite distractions, composure in the presence of stress, all these things that athletes said, yeah, it's really important. Nobody wanted to talk about it. It was kind of taboo. In the last 20 years, there has been a gradual understanding of the importance of that. And especially in the last 10 years, there's really been an increase in the acceptability and usage of a sports psychology, mental toughness coach, performance psychology coach at so many levels, professional athletic levels, Olympic levels, college levels. Um, Last night I was watching a tennis match of the US Open, and the number one woman player in the world, Iga Swiatek, has a full-time performance psychology coach who was sitting there right in the stands watching her play. She played very well and won, by the way. So you're quite correct. There has been a gradual um, greater appreciation of the importance and the value of this kind of training. And I take a little pride in having moved that needle. When you think about the demands that are on a cadet at West Point, and this is not a recruiting speech by any stretch. You've got an 18 to 22-year-old who is taking a minimum of 18 credit hours per semester, plus mandatory fitness and combatives training, mandatory fitness testing twice a year, a job within the organization of the Corps of Cadets, an administrative/leadership job, depending on where he or she is, first year, second year, third year, fourth year. That is a hell of a load. And then you can put on top of that 23 NCAA Division I athletic teams. So the 1,000 cadets out of the 4,000 total who are intercollegiate athletes are really in a pressure cooker all the time. And even a lot of the other cadets are participating in various club sports at a very significant level: judo, boxing, triathlon, and every cadet is training to be a tactical endurance athlete when he or she graduates and becomes a lieutenant in the U.S. Army. So, we ask a hell of a lot of those young men and women. So it makes sense that we give them every possible opportunity to learn how to be the very best version of themselves. So we pioneered this training going back in the early 90s. And by the turn of the decade, in the early 2000s, we were getting requests from our grads out there in the big Army saying, come on, you got to come to Fort Moore, Georgia, Fort Jackson, South Carolina, Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington, Fort Bliss, Texas. You need to train my subordinate leaders and my soldiers. And that led to a very significant development where there are now sports psychology, mental toughness trainers at over 20 U.S. Army posts here in the United States and in South Korea and in Germany and in Italy. So, we've really helped move the needle.
So this is so fascinating. I love hearing about what's going on behind the curtain. So what are the kind of tools that, because even just as you mentioned, just surviving as a cadet, forget D1 athletics on top of it, that's a pressure cooker, right? And then to add, okay, and on top of that, you're now going to compete in, D1 athletics is going to be huge mentally, I would think, pressure wise. So let's talk about some of the tools. What are the things that you're then pushing out into the bases? Are they exercises? Is it curriculum? Is it, how do you spread the word?
Well, it is a full curriculum.
Okay.
Of mental skills for peak performance. The curriculum to think effectively, do particular exercises so that you develop long-lasting and relatively bulletproof confidence. Other techniques and other understandings about focus and concentration. Other techniques about stress management and energy recovery, both in the short term and the long term, and then a fairly comprehensive goal setting curriculum, which helps someone crystallize what is important to me, what outcome am I striving for, what are the areas that I need to develop greater competence and confidence in? And then for each of those identified areas which lead to the outcome, very specific actions that need to be taken and very specific, affirmative belief statements that need to be endorsed. And we can construct a script and then narrate it into a custom audio file. That can become tremendously powerful. And then there's a curriculum about envisioning success, planning what is going to happen when you are in this training environment or in this deployment environment, in this operational environment. How good are you at seeing, hearing, feeling, experiencing what you want to see, hear, feel, experience before you get there, so that you have a sense of being in a comfortable place, relatively speaking comfortable, even when bullets are flying. And the most gratifying feedback I've ever received. I mean, yeah, I've mentored people to national championships and Super Bowls and Olympic gold medals, but to hear a young officer tell me that in the heat of battle, actual human, the most stressful thing you can imagine, ground combat, bullets flying, bombs going off, they were able to keep a good head on their shoulders, and they attribute a lot of that to the work that they did with me and my colleagues at West Point. That's the real Super Bowl, if you ask me.
Yeah, I love when I think of that, I think of inoculating yourself against discomfort, because what happens most of the time is whether it's too hot outside, I'm not going to go train, or the conditions aren't right, or I don't feel good, or the stories we start to tell ourselves about what's possible, and then hence we then align our actions and our outcomes to them, right? So
Indeed, yeah. We always align our actions with the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves. And it requires a little self-awareness to start understanding the stories that you are indeed telling yourself about yourself, and what repercussions that those stories have on your subsequent behavior, whether it's in a training or practice environment, or whether it's in a game tournament performance environment.
Just watching the Olympics the last few weeks, we're a couple of weeks past it, but almost every athlete that you saw perform at their best had a story around how they got there. And the answer usually was, oh, I've already seen this. This already happened. I've been talking to myself about this for the last month, year, 2 years, right? Like, I've been standing on that podium in my mind since I decided I was going to go for this.
Indeed. One of the great stories is 20-year-old Amit Elor, women's gold medal wrestling. And, she said at her press conference following her gold medal match, I woke up that morning and all day long, I was telling myself, I'm an Olympic gold medalist. I'm an Olympic gold medalist. I'm an Olympic gold medalist. It was not an accident. You can orchestrate these things and give yourself the best possible chance of a successful outcome.
So I love that self-talk, and I work with young athletes on that. But here's the biggest headwind that I run into when I have them focus on that. And I feel like we're raising a generation of kids who we want to be polite and kind and caring. And so they have this self-talk going on of, if I start talking about myself as if I'm the best, then I'm a jerk. Mm-hmm. So I can't, how do I say I'm the best, and still be a nice, kind human, right? Yeah. So you talk about it in the first chapter, you talked about confidence having a downside and appearing as being too cocky, right?
Exactly. Our society in general, not just for this present generation, but going back 3, 4, 5 generations, our society has a rather ambivalent attitude toward confidence. You know, everybody say, "Oh yeah, confidence is really important." I remember a black and white short film clip literally going back to the 1930s, where two kids are involved in a discussion. One is training for a boxing match to defend the honor of the local neighborhood gang against the new kid coming from cross town, and his buddy who's helping him prepare has a book on boxing, and it says here in the book that a fighter has to have confidence. Have you got any? And the tall, skinny, geeky kid says, "Gee, I don't think so." So here we are, so many years ago, understanding that it's important, yet you better not have too much of it, and you better not talk about it. And if you do talk about it, you're going to get a lot of dirty looks, and you're going to get a lot of criticism. So that the important thing to learn is confidence is not what you say. Confidence is not what comes out of your mouth. Confidence is what you say to yourself in the privacy of your own mind, and you feel in the privacy of your own heart. And you can be extremely confident on the inside, but also extremely polite, modest, and respectful on the outside. Again, our culture has a funny way of responding to any kind of outspoken, confident individual. Back when I was in grammar school, a young boxer by the name of Cassius Clay, who became Muhammad Ali, was vilified in the sporting press because he was a very outspoken, naturally effusive individual. And he said, "I'm going to beat so-and-so this way." And he said, "I am the greatest." And everybody hated him. Mm-hmm. And people think that if I start thinking that way about myself, I'm going to be socially shunned the same way Muhammad Ali, Joe Namath, Richard Sherman, and any outspoken athlete tends to be. Mm-hmm. But here's the trick. For every guy like Muhammad Ali, there are a dozen just as successful world-class performers who are unbelievably polite and modest on the outside, okay? You can think of the Manning brothers. They never called much attention to themselves. I never met Peyton, but I worked with Eli for decades. He's very polite on the outside, very calm, very low-key. But he stepped into the huddle, and it's like, "Okay, boys, we're going." I think the Williams sisters were the same way. They were schooled by their dad, Richard, to believe that they were the best in the world and that nobody could beat them. But you never heard them taunting anyone. You never heard them basically tooting their own horn out loud. They're quiet on the outside, but very, very powerful on the inside. And everybody can learn to do that. I don't care what your personal style is at the moment. You can learn to have the right combination of modesty and respectfulness on the outside, which is important if you want to have any friends. And you can have really strong certainty in yourself, really strong belief on the inside. And you're going to need that if you're going to compete at the level that you're truly capable of competing at.
I have an exercise I love to do with athletes. In fact, I just did it with my college-age son who's playing basketball at Colgate in the Patriot League, and that is having them identify a hero. It could be an athlete. It could be a superhero. It doesn't even have to be somebody real, but identifying what are their defining characteristics that you admire. And then they'll list, right? Like they're strong, they're powerful, they're funny, they're goofy. Like my son picked Steph Curry and he was like, I love that he's in the moment, at the heat of battle, he, step back three over and over and over again all day long. But off on the sidelines, he's kind of like dancing and goofing and having fun. And the fun correlation, when we admire somebody, it's generally because we have those characteristics in us, right? Mm-hmm. and identifying that in yourself. So talking about the antidote to how do you help kids who are saying, yeah, but I know I need to get this confidence thing, but I don't want to come across as a jerk.
Well, you need not come across as a jerk at all, as long as you keep your confidence to yourself, which is where it belongs. That's the only place it needs to be.
Yeah. It's an inside job, right?
It's an inside job. And, the good news is that everybody can cultivate that. And the even better news is that the more you cultivate it, the more of an advantage you create for yourself over your opponents and competitors,
Yeah, it's a muscle, right? We
Yeah.
need to build the muscle.
We need to build that muscle. And if we build that muscle to a little bit higher degree than our opponents, then we have created an advantage for ourselves. And you can sort of keep it quiet. It's your secret weapon. It's your superpower.
Yes.
And nobody needs to know about it.
Yeah.
You can open up your Superman shirt, in the privacy of your own heart and mind, and you open up that Superman shirt every time you put your uniform or your pads and your helmet and you buckle a chin strap, and man, there you are. That can be built.
So building on that about confidence, you go in to talk about the connection between subconscious thought or conscious thoughts, unconscious emotions, physical state, and then execution. And it's a circle, right? And then that can lead to one of two outcomes, either a sewer cycle or a success cycle. Could you talk a little bit about how those play out?
Well, we have to remember that we are thinking human beings inside a physical body. And everything that we consciously tell ourselves triggers a whole series of neural impulses and fires a whole series of neural circuits. And that firing connects to heart, lungs, kidneys, stomach, blood flow, everything. And so our physical state is significantly affected by our emotional state, which is significantly affected by what you're remembering, what you're telling yourself, the stories you're telling yourself about yourself, and what you're envisioning, imagining about the future. So all of that conscious stuff affects your emotional state, which is changing your muscle tension, blood flow, hormone production. And naturally, everything we do in our physical body. Whether we're talking about something as, a gross motor activity like football or rugby, even to a fine motor activity like typing a research paper or giving a lesson, or let's face it, working in an operating room as a surgeon. One of my clients is a retinal surgeon. He's operating on tissue that is 2 millimeters thick. You better be pretty darn precise. That is the finest of fine motor skills. And he'll tell you, and any honest surgeon will tell you, my peace of mind, my ease of being makes a huge difference in the quality of my work and makes a huge difference in the outcome of my work. And those outcomes are pretty darn serious. If he's not accurate, somebody's going to go blind in one eye or both eyes. The same goes for neurosurgeons. Another client of mine is a pediatric heart surgeon. This woman operates on a heart muscle the size of a walnut. And, there are consequences to this. So ease of being, peace of mind, trust in your skill set, trust in your equipment, trust in the surgical team, the anesthesiologist, the 2 nurses and attendants. All of that is hugely important to how precise you are with your eyes and your fingers when you're working in a tiny, 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 tiny space.
Yeah. And those are such great examples. And what we're talking about most of the time is working with athletes where they're not in a life or death situation, yet it feels that
Yeah, it
way,
sure
right?
does feel like it's life and death game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So could, like, for just for fun, I've got a client right now, let's play a game, who her story is I should have made a better team. I'm a better athlete. My friends are on the better team. I didn't make it. It's hard for me to have a good attitude because I'm not where I'm supposed to be.
Okay. Now, see, that is a fascinating utterance. It's hard for me to have a good attitude because I'm not where I think I should be. How come the reality of you not being where you'd like to be dictates that you have a bad attitude? Where is that written? Who carved that into stone anywhere? And when you give it any serious thought, I said, well, nobody said it had to be that way. That's a choice that you're making. Would it not, on the contrary, be ridiculously helpful and effective for you to have a really great attitude in order to move from where you are, this uncomfortable place, to where you want to be? Wouldn't a really good attitude facilitate that improvement more so than grumble, grumble, I'm in trouble, this isn't right, what's the matter with me? Um, it's not rocket science.
Yeah.
It's just that we have never done a good job in our society helping people to think effectively.
Well,
So
and we give all of our power away. Like,
any athlete that you counsel, you know, it's not necessarily his or her fault that they think this way. They've been
yeah.
socialized to think this way, but they can change their mind. No question about it. They can change their mind.
And what I hear a lot too is we're raising a generation of perfectionists, right? And so these kids are now getting to where they only get A's, we only get A pluses. So any type of perceived headwind, even if it means you're playing on the freshman team as a freshman, which is normal, by the way, right? That you see that as I'm not enough. And that's the story that gets told versus, so I had her do a pros and cons list. Well, what are the pros of being on the freshman team? Well, I get to play every minute of every point because I'm the best player on the floor. Great. So what's going to happen when you're on the floor the whole time? Well, I'm probably going to get better, right? Yes. Also, if you're on the floor all the time, do you have a leadership role? Oh, yeah, I'm the captain. Okay, great. So now we're also not working on just physical skills. We're working on your leadership skills, which is what's going to put you and set you ahead the next year or 2 years down the road, right? To get to the place where you want to be.
Yep.
When you go to the negatives, it's, well, my friends aren't here. Or like the negatives become very, you realize, oh, okay, it really isn't. And so when I had to write them down, I think it finally like kind of the light went off of, oh, by the way, too, when somebody sprains their ankle on the team above you and they need somebody, who do you think they're going to turn to? The one with
Will you be ready?
Will you be ready mentally as much as physically, right?
You'll be ready.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times. I mean, my book is full of stories about athletes who have, succeeded. I hope every reader will appreciate that none of them were overnight sensations, that they all had to work really hard to get there, mentally, physically, emotionally. They had to work really hard. And there are, I could tell you hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other stories about athletes who came to me, they're trying to make their college team. They were a big deal in high school, but now they're in this other environment, and it's very intimidating. And there's some athletes who reached out to me when they were in their second or third year of their college experience, and they hadn't made the varsity team. They hadn't, they were sitting on the bench, and they needed to find a way to look at themselves and decide that they were going to be ready should an opportunity present itself. Okay, I'm number 2 on the depth chart. That's what the depth chart says. But I'm like a dog straining at the leash, wanting to get in, and I'm constantly bothering my coach. Coach, what do you need to see from me? What little things you need to see from me so that I can be the number 1 person at my event or at my weight class? This is how you learn to be really effective. You mentioned the generation of perfectionists that were around. Well, perfectionism is nothing new. Unfortunately, the reality of most social media is to reinforce, oh, everything's great with me, everything's great with me, everything's great with me. Here's my picture at a nice restaurant, and here's the picture of me at the beach, and I'm having a wonderful time. And you get that, you say, well, I'm not having such a wonderful time. What the hell is wrong with me? So those messages that so many kids are getting hundreds of times a day really don't help them with patience and persistence, which are things that are really going to help them, not just as a middle school or high school athlete, but well into their 40s, 50s, 60s.
Yeah, I think of Tom Brady, the well-known example, right? But him being 7th on the depth chart at Michigan and treating every single rep. He's like, even if I only had 2 reps, those were my 2 reps. And how that mindset got him to like treating it. He goes, every single time I got to get on the field, that was my Super Bowl. And then yesterday I was listening to Michael Keaton talk about his journey on Smartless on that podcast, which I love. And he had a very similar approach acting, but that's what I love about sports is all of this is interchangeable. You're talking about it in medicine or acting or however these kids, at some point they're going to have to pivot and they're going to take everything they learn from their sport and use it for the next thing. And Michael Keaton said, they asked him, how did you get to be so good? How did you get to do Batman and Mr. Mom and Beetlejuice and all these different, genres? And he said, because every time I walked in, I realized they wanted me to succeed. They weren't trying to weed out bad. They were looking for good. And I would just go into the audition and say, for 15 minutes, I get to do my dream job. He goes, and then I go back to waiting tables and parking cars. But for those 15 minutes, I was on the stage. I was doing exactly what I wanted to do. And clearly that came through in those auditions to the point versus going into the audition. Well, they don't know me. I have never gotten a role before. Like, what is the thing you're telling yourself about what's going to happen in that moment? So, and then, like you said, to the battlefield, if you have somebody on the battlefield that's only worried about getting shot at, but not doing their job, there's no way they can perform the way they need to in a life or death situation.
Very, very true. Can you approach any audition, any tryout, any practice with a certain degree of, really energized curiosity? That's the word that strikes me when I hear your Michael Keaton story. How good can I be here? This is a cool opportunity. How good can I be here? And you can take that overall ethos of energetic curiosity and you can micro it down to each rep of a practice drill, each stroke in a golf match, each point played in a tennis match, each play from scrimmage in football, each episode for the soccer, hockey, lacrosse player. It's very possible to cultivate that and to teach yourself to approach that deliberately.
Yeah, he said, everybody told me, don't Clean and Sober. Why would you do that movie? Like, that's way too toxic of a topic. You should stay over here in comedy. And he said, I was curious. And he said that I just really wanted to try different things. I didn't want to get pinned into a corner. But that's what the best in anything do is they take the risk, not because of the glory I might get on the other side, but because I'm curious. Let's try it, right? Growth mindset.
Let's see how good we can be. You know,
Yeah.
I have this sort of, I have this little twinkle of suspicion that I can be good. And that twinkle has to be fed. And that's what several chapters in my book are about. How you feed that little twinkle of suspicion, this idea that, I've got some good stuff going for me. And then bringing that to your competitive or your performance arena, whether it's the pool, the gym, the court, the mat, the operating room, the stage, the conference room for what I refer to as white collar athletes. Yeah, it all generalizes.
So let's dive into that. I love that. In chapter 5, you talk about optimists versus pessimists. And optimist, the power of an optimist, and by the way, as Seligman points out, it's a learned skill, right? So people think, oh, I've got it or I don't.
That's
Yet
right.
again, back to learning this muscle, what optimists have is this situation is temporary, it is limited, and it is external, right? Pessimists focus on it being permanent, pervasive, and personal. And they take everything in their life with the 3 Ps. This is my state is never going to change. This is the way it's always going to be. Next year, I'm just going to have a different coach who's also going to hate me, right? Like they've got the story going
The story
before they
goes.
even,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So you're projecting the reason for your own demise versus the optimist is like, oh, well, this pain is temporary. Okay, I can do the extra reps, or I can, I can be the 12th man. I don't care. This is going to be a limited situation, and it's outside of my control at the moment. So I'm going to focus on what I can control. Can you
Exactly.
think of any examples that come to mind from your work of working with those types of people? Either.
I have that conversation with people every week uh, because as much as, as important as it is to sort of feed your mind with your very small successes and very small improvements, whatever they are, um, you also have to completely rationalize your setbacks and mistakes and failures. And I use the word rationalize carefully, okay? As in make rational. Keep it in a functional perspective. An irrational reaction to a mistake would be, oh, it's going to happen all over and over and over and over and over again. It's never going to change. That permanent explanation of a bad event, that is irrational. A rational explanation of said bad event, you double fault, you lose a game on your serve, going back to the tennis analogy. A rational explanation is, okay, I blew that one. Yeah, lost that game. Okay, it's over. It's over. It happened. I'm not denying that it happened. But I'm leaving it in the past where it belongs. It was a temporary event. And to continue having a rational reaction to a bad event, you leave it in the past in terms of time. You leave it in the place and space where it occurred. Okay? It's limited. It happened. It happened there. It happened on that green of that hole. I'm not going to take it with me to other places. I'm not going to think, oh, now I'm not putting well. I'm going to leave it there in time. It was temporary. I'm going to leave it there in terms of space or place. It's limited. And I'm also not going to jump to the conclusion that said mistake or setback is the definitive statement about me. I'm going to treat it as not the truth. Temporary, limited, not the truth. Okay, yeah, it happened, but it doesn't tell the whole story about me. I refuse to jump to that conclusion. That 3-pronged approach is very rational. It is irrational to think The mistake's going to happen forever. The mistake's going to happen everywhere. And it's all my fault and I can't do anything about it. Really, that is the depressive triad that a lot of people fall into. Everything stinks, nothing's going to change, and it's all my fault. Okay, I guarantee, I don't make too many guarantees in my work, Ms. Jones. But the one guarantee I will make is that if you think that way, you'll never perform at your true level. We'll never know. You will be inhibiting your performance equipment through that mind-body connection, thought, emotion, physical state, execution. You will be compromising yourself if your thoughts are, everything stinks, it's all my fault, and it's never going to change. Be careful. That's all I can tell you. Be careful.
And on the flip side, I'm guessing your favorite clients, I know my favorite clients are the ones that maybe have a little bit of irrational optimism, and whether things are going bad or not, they're able to look on the bright side. And you have a beautiful story in your book. I believe it was when you were a PhD student at UVA and you were doing research on, there were football players, but the guy was told the story about being a basketball player and missing and missing and missing. Can you share that story?
Yeah. This was a wonderful experience. I wasn't there to witness it firsthand, but it was related to me by my University of Virginia professor, Dr. Bob Rotella. And it became a regular conversation in our graduate student seminars on confidence, where a young man who was the quarterback of the University of Virginia football team a couple years before I had arrived there, he was a member of a panel of top-performing Virginia athletes who my professor, Dr. Rotella, brought into a graduate student seminar, and he asked each of these people to share their most confident moments in their, Division I NCAA sport career. And the individual in question, Stuart Anderson, told a very different story about his most confident moment. Everybody else talked about, okay, yeah, I scored 4 touchdowns or hit 5 home runs or set the state record, Stuart Anderson told a story about a very, basically one of the statistically worst performances of his life in a high school regional or sectional championship basketball game. And the curious thing is that he was missing a lot of shots. But by the time the clock was winding down and they were at their final possession, their last opportunity to win, he was thinking to himself, well, I'm due to get one in. The mistakes, the setbacks were temporary. They were left in the past where they belong. They did not tell him the story about himself. He did not conclude, well, I just don't have it tonight. He concluded that, well, I've made a bunch of mistakes. That means there's nothing left in me but a good one. And he was able to convince the coach on the sideline, Coach, give me the ball. I want the shot. I'm due to get one in. And the coach was said, okay, man, he's feeling it. I'm going to go with the confident guy. And so they inbound the ball and they pass. And Stu Anderson gets it at the top of the key and he launches the shot and it goes in and they win. And the guy gets carried off the court on the shoulders of his teammates, having made like 2 for 15 for the night, And it all came down to that ability to look constructively at your experience. If I'm struggling, it only means that there's a potential turnaround at the next moment, okay? As opposed to, well, I'm struggling. I guess I'm going to continue to struggle. I guess everything's going down the tubes. I'll just see this one through and go back to the drawing board on Monday. That's not a way to win in the moment.
So what do you tell clients who have that loop going on? how do you help them fix it in the moment? Can you do it when the house is already on fire, or do they need to do it before they get in that moment to help
Well,
them walk in and put the smoke out before it
I,
becomes a
I
flame?
think it's possible to do it when the house is on fire. It's pretty darn hard. Um, it's if you had spent the majority of your waking hours reviewing past mistakes, telling yourself stories about yourself that I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that, envisioning future disasters. If the majority of your thoughts about yourself have been in those directions, man, it's really hard to suddenly throw the switch and be a super confident Stu Anderson type person in the moment. Um, it's possible, pretty darn difficult. I suggest that you cultivate your ability to look at yourself in those kind of Stuart Anderson optimistic terms by cultivating, building up what I refer to in the book as a mental bank account. You know, you've got to take stock of your successes in the past. You've got to take stock of your effort and your little tiny victories day by day. You've got to talk to yourself about what you want as if you got it. And if you do that consistently enough, you give yourself the opportunity to have those Stuart Anderson type moments. You make it a hell of a lot easier. Okay? I'm never going to guarantee that, oh, if you're confident, you're always going to win. No, there's something that we acknowledge in the military. There's something called the enemy. The enemy gets a vote in the outcome of any operation. Okay, it's not just us doing what we do. We're going to have a hell of a lot of confidence that when we do what we do, we can neutralize the enemy, overcome the enemy, but we're not just going to blithely assume that everything's going to go fine, you know? But we sure are going to think constructively about here's what we've got, here's how well prepared we are, here's our plan, this is how the plan can work, here's our fallback plan A, B, C, D. So we're ready when pardon the expression, when the crap hits the fan.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to go into it with a certain degree of optimism. And we're going to react in the moment with the best, most constructive, eyes wide open, ears wide open certainty that we have. That's the trick. Yeah, we all have the capability to do that. We just have to practice.
I had the NYU women's volleyball coach on a couple times, and he talks about practicing dirty, which means actually try for the mistakes so that you can feel what that feels like, so that when you make a mistake, it's not a, oh, this is horrible. And there are some kids who feel this pressure to have to be playing perfectly all the time.
All the time, right.
And we know that that's not realistic, right?
You know, we know that that's not realistic. And if you don't ever experience setbacks, adversity in your practice and preparation environments, you won't be very well equipped to deal with said adversity when you get to a performance. So, you know, practice, rehearsal, training should be designed to put you in situations where, guess what, ladies and gents, you're going to fail. You're going to fail.
And that's okay.
I had the privilege of spending time with Dr. Eric Anders Ericsson.
Oh, wow.
Who is the Swedish scientist who was really responsible for the original research that has come to be known as the 10,000 hour rule. He has a very good book entitled Peak. And unfortunately, the 10,000 hour rule has been sort of, pirated, misinterpreted. And, you know, Dr. Erickson's really important point is that, yeah, it takes a lot of practice, but it's got to be the right kind of practice. It's got to be practice more or less at the edge of your present level of competence. You have to practice the hard things And when you practice hard things, well, you're going to fail at them some of the time. If you're not failing at it some of the time, well, you ain't practicing right. Sorry, you know. Yeah, everybody wants to be successful with every rep of every practice. Yeah, look at me, I'm really good. Okay, well let's structure a drill that makes it. Let's structure a drill where you're only going to succeed maybe 50, 60% of the time. Mm-hmm. The other times you're training yourself to deal with the adversity that this big bad world is going to throw at you. Okay? We're going to set up training environments, and they do this in the military. We're going to set up training environments where your best effort gets thrown out the window. Okay? Oh, yeah, you took this position? Okay, well, you just lost this asset, that asset. Now here's what the enemy is doing. What are you going to do? All right? So you got to train yourself to be constructive in those difficult moments. And if you're not training yourself to do that, you're not training yourself for reality. You're training yourself for some nice sort of Disney movie fairy tale outcome.
Right.
Take your pick.
Yeah. And parents who are listening, I like to say we need to model what it is we want them to do. So I do have a lot of parents say, yeah, but my kid's a perfectionist and they don't want to do anything wrong. So like I have a client right now and I said, what don't you do well? She's like, oh, I'm a horrible cook. And I said, awesome. Guess what we're doing? You're cooking.
Yeah.
Like, make something for me. Show me what is your worst. And she's like, oh, I can't make pancakes. So sure enough, she's texting me pictures of these really funny, lumpy shaped pancakes. I'm like, because once we get comfortable with saying, oh, what was the worst thing that came out of that? They went in the trash, or we had a good laugh over the fact that I didn't make a perfect pancake. Like, then I can start applying that to other parts of my life, right?
All right. Certainly in terms of parenting, moms, dads out there, you are your child's role model and basically hypnotic inducer. So if you recognize that your child has a somewhat ineffective level of perfectionism, where do you think that came from? You model what you want your kids to be. Take on a challenge and respond to the inevitable setbacks and difficulties with the smile and the deep breath and the conviction that you will give it a good effort and maybe succeed next time. Respond to those situations the way you want your kid to, because he or she's learning it from y'all. There's no mystery about that.
Yeah. And if you do this and you hear something and you try it with your kid and you show them how you are practicing dirty by trying something you've never done before and then modeling it for them, and tell me what your feedback is. I would love to hear. This is exactly the kind of stuff that, again, my kids are now all in college and above, and I'm not home with anybody anymore, but I'm still finding ways to try to model to them that, like, yesterday I went golfing. I haven't golfed in 7 years. It was not pretty, but that's not the point. I haven't done it in 7 years. So the whole time the athlete in me is like, I got to do better. And the reality, I was trying to be in the moment and be like, yes. There should be no expectation of you hitting the ball.
I hope you were approaching each and every shot with the attitude of, okay, well, let's see how good I can do with this one. And if I drive it into the trees or I hit my wedge shot into the water, okay, well, it happened. Now let's see what I can do with the shot that I've got now.
The next. Exactly. Yeah, beautiful. Oh, this is so lovely. I thank you so much for your time, Dr. Z, and everybody needs to go buy The Confident Mind. I loved it so much. I listened to it, but I've also got notes every time that I work with teams. I'm taking nuggets out of here. So it's so valuable. Whether you're raising an athlete or not, again, he used examples from everybody needs to understand what are the tools that we can use to feel more confident, exude more confidence, help our children or those people that you impact in your life have that gift as well. In my opinion, that is the biggest gift we can give our kids, is that understanding that they are enough. just as they are. They don't need to be able to get a gold medal or be the fastest or win the science contest. It's the fact that they show up and they give their best effort.
Very, very true. Thank you, Kirsten, for the opportunity to be with you today. If your listeners are curious and want to contact me, nate.zinsser.com. It couldn't get much easier than that. And I look forward to future opportunities, and we'll talk some more soon, I hope.
Can I ask you one final question we like to ask all of our guests? So I can't wait to hear your answer to this, but you can answer it however you like, one word, a paragraph, however. But the best athletes I know do this. How would you answer that statement? Fill that statement in.
The best athletes I know practice hard and then play pretty loudly. Okay? Practice hard, play loud, exuberant.
Be all in.
Yeah. That's my quick answer.
I like it.
Yeah.
I'm going to have you back. Can I have you back? I already want to have you back. Okay. Parents, please like, share anywhere you find this podcast. Jump on, send Dr. Z a note, send me a note. Try something, practice dirty. Do something that you've never done before. Get out there with a golf club like I did. I got the blisters to prove it today. It's perfect. So thanks so much. We'll talk soon. Hey, Raising Athletes podcast fans, Kirsten here, and I have to share my new favorite hydration secret with you, Corvive's Hydrate in pink lemonade. If you're looking for the ultimate hydration boost, this is it. Corvive's Hydrate is an NSF certified for sport, trusted by 4 Major League Baseball teams and 3 military bases. With 6 grams of pure organic cane sugar, it ensures you absorb all the electrolytes you need. And get this, it has 3 times the electrolytes and 4 times less sugar than those leading brands. Plus, it's developed using the World Health Organization's standards for oral rehydration solutions, making it the equivalent of a bag of IV fluids. Best of all, there are no artificial dyes or sweeteners. It's so perfect for the entire family. You can drink it any time of day, before, during, or after workouts or sports. So say goodbye to sugary juices and hello to superior hydration with Corvive's Hydrate in pink lemonade. Visit Corvive.com. That's CORVIVE.com. And use promo code Kirsten. That's KIRSTEN for 30% off your order. Try it today and feel the difference.